Thanks everyone for joining. We've got a few people, looks like they are still joining, so we're gonna give them a moment to hop in and then we'll get started. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, my name is just a quick, I guess, introduction for our FileBound team. My name is Matt Johnson, and I'll be leading the show today, if you will. But just to introduce the rest of our team, so we have Jim Mountain, who is that leads our FileBound sales team inside of our company. And then our implementation and support team, just to make mention, some of them are on today as well. We've got Aeneas, Ben, Kyle, again, myself, and then Scott and Stacy. And so you'll notice on the right-hand side, I put an email address. So if you need to get a hold of Jim, that would be his email up there, as well as if you need to get a hold of anyone in support, you can use our new email address, which is fbsupport@vitalecm.com. And really today, what we're going to talk about is, as part of our software education series, is the approval process for invoices. And really the feedback that we receive from our existing customers is what we intend to share today, as well as with any other tips and tricks that we've come across the way as well. And so we've got good attendance today, well over 75 users watching, which is awesome. And in the future meetings that we'll have, you'll see kind of on the list, it's going to follow similar suit. We'll pick a topic, we'll dive deep into it, and then from there, kind of invite anybody in your department, or if you have other folks from other departments that would like to attend, they're welcome to do so. So just to give you a little bit of background about our company. So VRC, which stands for Vital Records Control, is the name of our company, and we live in the VitalECM division. We are a premier FileBound reseller. We provide the installation, the training, and support. What's important to note about that is by being a premier FileBound reseller, that gives us direct access to FileBound, which means your comments, feedback, product improvements, etc., filter through us directly to FileBound, and they review those with us quarterly and add those suggestions to their roadmap, when possible. Our company is a document conversion, or provides document conversion services as well as document storage and shredding. So if you need any of those services as well, please let us know. We're happy to connect you to the right people in that regard. As far as FileBound goes, we have well over 300 implementations coast to coast, and then quite a few customers now up in Canada, which is great. Because we've been doing it for so long, really we're experts in the document and content management industry, and really have worked with the capture and workflow process and process automation for well over 25 years, which is awesome. A little bit about FileBound. They're a division of Upland Software. They're based out of Austin, Texas. They've been around for over 25 years. With a large number of implementations across the world, if you will. And then their support and development is based out of Lincoln, Nebraska, so that they're great to work with in that regard. One of the reasons that we've liked FileBound over the years, first off, is it's a browser-based solution, but it's built on .NET technology that sits on top of a Microsoft SQL database. And why that's important is that your information is portable, and it's safe from being proprietized, if you will, that you might see from other software platforms. I'll also show today has an easy search and retrieve interface with customizable workflows. And then, of course, we've got a full integration suite available with FileBound as well, meaning that if your accounting system has the ability to allow integration, FileBound can do that because we can connect to their API suite and go from there. You'll see the items in bold. Those are ones, integrations that have been spearheaded by our customer base, if you will, and then followed through with us, with those software companies. So if you don't see your accounting system listed there today, please let us know and be happy to work with you, work with your accounting system, and get a tight integration built in that regard. Just really just a mapping of our customer base across the United States. And then again, in Canada, we cover all 4 of the time zones in the United States. But then in addition to that, even the Atlantic time zone, which is an hour after the Eastern time zone, which is fun. Just some things to think about as we're kind of working through our meeting today, as far as it relates to accounts payable, is when a customer comes to us and joins FileBound, it's really kind of an invoice lifecycle change for them. So in the beginning, they might have done data entry at the point when they got the invoice back from the department or the location, if you will. And then that a lot of times happens towards the end of the month, because that's kind of how people would chase down invoices. Please send me your invoices, and then enter those in. With the adding of FileBound into the process, we kind of flip that upside down, and we say, okay, as the invoice comes to you from the vendor, add that invoice into FileBound, and then at that point is when we do our data entry and include the OCR as well. And the goal is then that data that we've collected in the beginning of the process will then get imported, if you will, or automatically ported over to the accounting system direct, just to save data entry in the accounting system. So that's ultimately our goal. So we change that life cycle. And then the other thing that we like to focus on really is the number of times that you have to view each invoice in the organization. So for example, if an invoice enters FileBound and we have the ability to apply geocoding automatically, or we have the ability to auto approve the invoice, we definitely want to take advantage and do those types of things, where that benefits you, of course, as a person that approves invoices. It's less invoices that you would have to touch. So that's obviously important. The other thing we want to try to do is how can we automatically post this data into the accounting system? So if we spent the time to collect data from the beginning, we've auto-coded the invoice and auto-approved it, let's see, can we automatically post the data into the accounting system, which is where that integration comes into place. And with some of our customers, they're getting to a point where that's happening well enough in both of those steps that they're looking into full automation, where the idea is invoice comes in, the data is extracted using OCR, it gets routed into FileBound. There are comparisons made between purchase orders or receiving documents, for example. If everything lines up the way it's supposed to, we can auto code it, we can auto approve it. And then instead of having the AP touch it, if we're successful there, we can automatically then send that off to the accounting system. So we're really working towards a day where an invoice comes into FileBound and automatically gets pushed into the accounting system without a user ever having to touch it. And even if that's 5%, that's a big win for a lot of folks. The other thing to think about would be then tracking the invoices pending their approval process, so that the AP team knows, hey, I've added the invoice when we got it into FileBound, and now I can track those invoices and go from there. So let's take a look. Let me hop out of here, and I'm actually going to open up the FileBound software. And what you'll see when I get to my FileBound site, it's going to ask me to log in. And so when I do, then I'll click my username and password and enter that in. And as a person that approves invoices, the first place that you'll land really is on your assignments page. And this is like an inbox is what I kind of think of it as, of all the invoices that are assigned to you that you can approve. And it could be a situation where these are all of the invoices just for your department. Maybe that's your role. Or maybe your role is there's 3 or 4 of you that are in that department that have access to the same approval folders, and you pick and choose which ones that you're going to approve and go from there. And so when I click on my assignments panel, which is this icon on the left, you'll see everything that's assigned to me is sorted out into different subfolders. And so in the beginning, a lot of our customers start off just with invoices. And so they'll see a folder for their invoices. But as your company expands into other different types of workflows within the system, you'll notice that those documents will come to you in different subfolders. So again, here's one just called performance review, one called purchase order approval, those types of things. So when I select my assignment subfolder, you'll see that I've got all of the information that I need at that moment, if you will, to know which one I want to open up. Some of our customers will like to sort. They like to maybe sort by due date, and you can do that by just simply clicking on the header there. Some of our customers, they like to sort specifically by just the vendor name and kind of process invoices in a certain order. All that is totally fine. Whatever is easiest for you is going to work for us. To open up an invoice, I just simply click on this little view icon, which is kind of a piece of paper with a folded corner on it. When I click on that icon, you'll see it'll open up a new tab in our browser, and then that'll take me to my viewer. From a person that's approving invoice standpoint, what we want to do is offer you the ability to get in and out of here as quickly as possible, and meaning the least number of steps, the better, right? Today, what I'll do, because we've got a lot of different customers on the line, pushing to over 90 people now, and everyone has a little bit different requirements. I'm going to talk about a lot of the different requirements that some people may or may not have. So some of the things you may hear me talk about may apply to you specifically, other things may not. But I do want to kind of show everybody some of the different tips and tricks within the system. So the first place I like to talk about when we're in the viewer is in our bottom left-hand corner. And you'll see that we've got a grouping of 5 icons. Well, the middle icon is what it's called the file journal. And what I like about the file journal is it gives us the ability to add a note. So if I'm thinking about how I would have did things in a paper world, maybe I would have written something on the invoice, and maybe what I need to do now based on my business rules or the requirements from my accounting team, maybe I need to add something in the file journal when I'm looking at this invoice. So you can simply just click on, again, that middle icon to open the file journal. You can type in the name or your comment there, and then click on the add button. When I click on the add button, you'll notice that it adds the comment. It has my name on there. It also has the day and time that I left it. It's also not deletable. So now everybody knows when you looked at this invoice, you had something to say, and this is what you kind of put in there basically. And as the AP team receives the invoice, and looks at it from you after you approve it, they may add in their own comments to say, okay, based on this comment, this is what I did or whatnot, and so on and so forth. So now 3 months, 6 months, or even when an auditor comes, if somebody opens up the invoice, they'll see that story based off of the information in the file journal. So incredibly important to know, especially as an approver in the file journal. Some of you may be in a situation as well where the invoice goes to the AP team first. They look at it inside of FileBound and then eventually might send it to you for approval. In that case, then they may also include some notes. So what I always tell folks that are approving invoices, it's nice just to have the file journal panel open so that you can always view those notes in case they came to you from the AP team. And the other nice thing about FileBound is it remains open. So if I close out of my viewer, just to show you, and reopen the viewer, whether it's that invoice or a different invoice, you'll see that the file journal panel remains open. And so that way you only have to open it really one time. And after that, it's always going to be open and available for you to view. That same logic applies to everything across the FileBound viewer. So you'll notice above the file journal, we've got our file tree. It's certainly possible that I could have clicked on this icon on accident or on purpose, and it collapses that tree. And you'll notice that now my file journal consumes that whole left-hand side because the top panel has been closed. If I simply click on that folder again, it reopens it, resizes everything, and that puts our file journal back in place. So again, just something to mention that you're welcome to kind of play around with a view that works best for you. But I would say that this is probably our most common view where we've got the file tree and then the file journal. As I move across the image, of course, we've got our invoice here. And below the invoice itself, we've got a panel for geocoding. So again, depending on business rules, some of you may be tasked to supply the geocoding information as your approval process. Great. FileBound has this little panel down below. You can simply click the add button, type in your geocoding, and away you go. Be sure to hit the save button. That will save the geo account for you. Or if you make a mistake and you want to start over, you can hit the delete button as well. To give you a little bit of history, as far as that geocoding panel is concerned, when it first started out, it really was just a read-only panel. And what FileBound required users to do was always click on this advanced panel here. Now, some of you use this advanced panel today, and there are definitely certain advantages to it. And I kind of want to show some of those as well. So for example, if I'm looking at this GL account and I type in my number 265110, and when I hit tab, you'll notice that it auto fills in my history description or my description field for me. So that way I kind of have a warm and fuzzy feeling that I've selected the correct GL account. If I don't know my GL account, what's possible in here is to click on this icon here, and I can type in the word parts and just hit search. And then that would give me the different invoice or different GL accounts available to use. If I wasn't sure about, if parts was the first word or the last word or whatever, I could use a wildcard character, which is a % sign, and then hit search again. And then that would give me any GL account, if you will, that has the word parts inside of it. And then I can pick and choose the GL account that I want from there. So if I select one of these and click OK, then you notice it'll fill in that information as well. So a couple of different ways to do that. Some of you, the way that your geocoding has been set up, might be using drop-down menus. So it may be something where you click a drop-down and it selects the location. Then the next drop-down is the department number, for example, and that number is filtered, or that list is filtered based off of our first selection. So you choose location, you get a filtered list for department drop-down, you click on that, you choose department. Once you choose that, it'll filter out a new list of GL accounts. You can select that, and then maybe even a sub account, after that. So I've seen folks where we've got 4 different GL accounts in there, or 4 different, fields in there, and all of those fields combined together supply that GL account. And really the purpose of that dropdown is to help filter things to make it easier for you so that you're filtering down to the GL account that applies to your location. And once you, and department, and then once you select that, really the sub account that applies again to your department, your location, and your GL account. So we're really filtering out all that out for you, which is great. Of course, as you fill in this information, if I just kind of keep going here, I can add my information, and then I would just simply click this add button, and then that would add that down to my geocoding here. If I needed to modify one, I could select my row, and I could simply just come up here and make a change. And as I make a change, you'll notice that it is reflected automatically down here. So I don't actually have to hit add because I'm not adding a new one. I'm just modifying the existing one in there. And once my variance is 0, I can simply just hit the save button, and I'm back to my what we used to call the preview panel. The good thing is now, for those of you that know your GL accounts, if you don't want to go into the advanced, you can certainly enter in that information there. If you're a company that is using the dropdowns, I like the advanced better. It gives you more real estate to handle the dropdown menus, where if you think of the amount of space you have here, it's not a lot to click a button and then see a list from the dropdowns. So perfect. Now, some of the additional panels that you may or may not have across the bottom might be associated to related documents. So if you think of folks that are on here that maybe add the receiving documents into FileBound, some people are scanning those documents in, some people have a sync set up with their accounting system, etc. But the idea is that if I'm looking at this invoice and I need to see this additional information, it could be located across the bottom here. Now, based on timing, it may not be appropriate for when you're approving your invoice, because maybe you're doing the receiving at that time. So again, that document wouldn't be there. Same idea if there happened to be a purchase order number, you could see that, or any vendor information that you might be curious about would be listed down there below. Doesn't mean you have to, again, open or look at any of those panels. I think in most cases, most of our folks are interested in what you leave in the file journal, or if you're required to do geocoding, what you leave in the geocoding. Perfect. So now once we're looking at the invoice, we've entered in our comments if needed. Again, if needed, we do our geocoding. Then we're really left up to our two buttons on the right-hand side, and that's approved or not approved. The nice thing is, no matter what button you click, it's going to go back to the AP team. We're simply just going to put it in two different folders, so that way they know once it's approved, what they should do with it. Or if it's not approved, then they'll know right away they need to look at that file journal, because most likely when you click not approved, you're going to tell them why, and that story is going to be put into the file journal. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to close out of here, and I want to mention something else as well. So some of the folks on the call do a lot of volume, right? They do a lot of invoices at a time. And what I think is important to show you is that on your assignments page, maybe I sorted by vendor name or due date, and you want to open up multiple invoices at the same time. So you can check mark one or more than one invoices on your assignments page here, and then click on the view icon. And that view link there ultimately is going to then open up all of those invoices into the viewer at one time. So the idea before, we just had one invoice open. So if we click approved, now I've got to come out and select my next invoice. If I select the two invoices and I click view, you'll see that those invoices will be brought into the viewer at the same exact time. So now I can process the first invoice in my list, and then I can go to my next invoice in my list and process that. So knowing that, then, to make life a little bit easier as well, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little icon that holds our viewer settings. And inside the viewer settings, you'll see a box at the top called Auto Expand File Nodes and Auto Expand All Branches. And I always recommend turning those on when you're inside of the viewer, because what will happen then is, instead of me having to expand each layer to get to the next invoice, I can simply just jump from this invoice and then jump to the very next invoice. So that's real convenient. Another one I know that some people talk to me about is that they'll email invoices outside of FileBound, and not everybody is storing the invoices as PDFs in FileBound. So they may want to prompt them to convert the image to a PDF before sending that invoice out via email. So that's a setting you can change as well. So again, just in our email section, just prompting that change to convert it to a PDF makes life a little bit better for you and the person receiving that invoice. Kind of a newer checkmark box towards the bottom here is going to be found in our workflow section. And the idea is that if you checkmark this to automatically load the next assignment from the file tree, then when you approve an invoice, it would then jump to the next invoice kind of automatically to then save you a little bit of time from having to click on the next invoice. And anytime that we change our settings inside of here, we simply just click on the reload. And what that does is it reloads our viewer using the new settings. And as you can see, then it auto expanded that tree view. So when I go to my first invoice, maybe I have to leave a note, maybe I don't. Maybe I have to do geocoding, maybe I don't. Then I hit approved or not approved. Now I simply just click on to the next document, perform the same tasks, and then when I'm all done, return back to my assignments page to see if anything is new or anything left to process. Okay, so let me close out of the viewer. We'll go back to our assignments page. So a couple things to talk about on the assignments page is we can monitor, or FileBound can monitor, your assignments page. So some of you, we've got it set up where when you receive an invoice, maybe you don't get an email at that moment, but let's say after 2 business days, if you've not logged into FileBound and processed the invoice, then FileBound will send you a reminder email. And when you get that reminder email, again, the idea is that you would hopefully come in and take care of that invoice if possible. The other thing would be then maybe the rule is after 5 days, if it hasn't been processed, that you can also do it, or you'll get another reminder email, and so on and so forth. when we're looking at our assignments or items, on this list, one of the things I do like to mention, especially for those maybe that have a large number of invoices, or maybe you've got a team of multiple people, or maybe you don't, and maybe you've got somebody helping you out for the day, that sort of thing. You can come into your options and export that list out to Excel. And when you do that, you could maybe say, okay, why don't you knock out these invoices? I'll knock out these invoices, and let's get caught up so the AP team, is happy once again. So that's certainly an option to kind of just think about and consider, especially when trying to process large volumes of invoices. So that's really what I wanted to cover as far as the assignments page goes and the viewer is concerned. The next thing I want to show you is how to search and find invoices inside of the system. So if I click on my search icon, which is again one icon below my assignments page, then I can select my AP invoices project from the top. And in here, I can really enter in any one of these criteria. So if I know my invoice number, I can certainly type it in. If I, wanted to type in maybe a vendor name, if you will, and then maybe a date range, I could do that as well. So I could, let's just say, I do something from the month of May, and I could type in a vendor name, let's just say UPS. And then when I hit search, then those invoices, would come up. Maybe I don't really want to do a date range. I just want to look at every invoice in the system that has a vendor name that starts with the letter U. And so I could just do that as well. And that would give me a list of invoices here. Same idea as our assignments page. We can sort by any of the columns there. We can export out to Excel if needed, and even check mark multiple ones to click view and view them inside of my viewer. You'll notice with the current status column that as invoices are processed in the workflow, one of the things that we'll do automatically within FileBound is update that status field. So let's have say you've got a vendor that reaches out and says, "Hey, are you guys going to pay this invoice?" And you can say, "Hey, it looks like it's in there. It's in the new folder. The AP team has it, so I'm sure they'll process it this week." So you would be able to tell in real time inside of FileBound where that's at in process. Or maybe it says paid, and maybe it has a check number and check date listed there. So then you'd be able to tell the vendor that looks like it's been paid with this check number, so keep an eye out. Some other things to mention as far as searching goes is we can use what are called wildcard characters. So when I'm looking at my vendor name, I could type in percent would be my wildcard character, and then I could type in for example, and then hit search. And then that would give me any vendor out there that has those two letters next to each other, whether it's the first character, the last character, etc. If I just hit search by itself, it quite literally gives me everything in there. If I wanted to look at this column more, I could make it a little bit wider by just expanding it, just like you would, if you will, inside of Excel. Okay, so let me go back to the viewer, and I want to talk a little bit more about automation. So depending upon what is possible in business rules, etc., we are working with a lot of your AP teams to come up with a way to automate some of that process. So perhaps we can automate the approval process. And so we might be able to take this invoice as it comes into FileBound, assigned to the AP team, and then maybe once a receiving document is synced into FileBound, we could have FileBound then compare the subtotal of the invoice to the total of the receiving document to find out, do they match? And if they do, then we can mark those as auto approved. We might be able to auto apply the geocoding based on certain rules. We might say, hey, this is a parts invoice, and we can auto fill in the geocoding based off of that decision. Or, hey, this invoice is going to the marketing team, so they're always going to code it with one of these two GL accounts. We can create those, and then maybe the marketing team fills in the blanks, that sort of thing. So a lot of different possibilities there. So if you come across invoices when there's patterns, certainly let your AP team know as a suggestion to say, hey, have we thought about automating this approval? And is that possible, right? It may be, maybe not, but that's a good place to start for sure. Great. That's really everything I wanted to cover as it pertains to the invoice process. And again, not every button that you saw, is going to be something that you have on your end. Not every, customer is going to require the approver to enter in GL coding, but thought it was a good idea to have a kind of a meeting to touch base on a lot of the different things that people are doing within the system. So if maybe you see something that benefits you in that regard, or maybe it's as simple as you joined and you learned that you can check mark multiples and click view, and maybe modify some settings, and again, all that, if it saves you some time, we definitely want to help out. Any feedback, in that regard is going to be great for us moving forward as well. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to log out of FileBound, and I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint slide. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how other people are also utilizing FileBound. And when you think about how we've rolled out FileBound to our customer base, a large number of our customers start off in the accounts payable department. And the benefit to the company by doing that is you really get into a situation where you have a workflow approval process that touches all of the pertinent people or the people that need to approve things inside of FileBound. And once we get a group of people that say, hey, all of our managers are now used to logging into FileBound, they go in there almost daily, they view and process their invoices, etc. Then they start branching out into other areas as well. So one of those I've seen folks do is a vendor onboarding process where maybe your internal rules require you to get approval before purchasing something from a new vendor. So that could be a process built into FileBound to get that approval handled. Vendor statements, sometimes people are asked to look and reconcile vendor statements. We can add that as a process in FileBound. And then really the big one is the forms processing. So if you think of FileBound as a tool to route documents for approval, we could take any form and route it for approval as well. And so I'll show you some examples of that here in a little bit. I've definitely seen companies, utilize FileBound to store HR employee files. A lot of times, companies have a nice HRIS system that handles a lot of the onboarding and offboarding, if you will, of employees. But maybe there's certain things that it doesn't do well or doesn't offer either. And so a lot of times we can, because of the fact that you already own FileBound, utilize the FileBound system to help out with those approvals or those forms, etc. Contract management's another one. Sales orders, customer onboarding. I've seen people kind of work with that. And then definitely a new integration that we're working with a company called Expense Point on is the ability to process your expense reports, using the Expense Point product. And then once they're finished, they actually can flow directly into FileBound using an API. And again, depending upon how your accounting system works, we could then also then push that data directly into your accounting system using API connections or what have you. Just to kind of give you a quick little visual of the APIs, of the Expense Point. This is just a simple mobile app. It lets you take pictures of your receipts, etc. If you ever would like a demo, let us know. We can get you in touch with Miranda. You're welcome to email her direct as well. The nice thing is with Miranda, she kind of has a FileBound demo. So if you do reach out to her direct, just let her know you're a FileBound customer and that you're working with us, and then she'll know, what demo basically to give you, if that makes sense. And then really let's talk about electronic forms. So when people are expanding the uses of FileBound, forms is really a real popular way to do that. And so check request, real common. So maybe you've got a process today. We can create a form inside of the system that you fill out, maybe attach whatever documents you need, fill out whatever fields you need, hit submit, and then that gets sent in through FileBound into the workflow. The benefit to that process that people give us feedback on is now when the AP department gets that request, they've got all the data they need, because part of the form was, hey, this field's required, I need this required, I need this required. You fill all that out. Now they're not reaching back out to you to collect extra information, thus wasting more time, right? They've got the information they need and they can process that check quickly, which is great. Purchase orders. So I've got some customers where they've got specific departments that process purchase orders because it affects their inventory count. So I've got some customers that have like a parts department that will, every time they place an order, it's all handled through the accounting system. So that way your inventory is up to date, et cetera. And then I've got other customers like that, or in addition to that, that will not create miscellaneous purchase orders, meaning non-parts purchase orders. They'll create those actually inside of FileBound. So we'll have a form, a process, even an approval process if it's needed. So that way the purchase order would live in FileBound. And then if you can kind of imagine, as the invoice comes into FileBound, we can have it connect across the bottom. And if the dollar amounts match up or what have you, we can give that invoice to the AP team. And now we wouldn't have to approve the invoice in FileBound because we've already got a purchase order that lives inside of FileBound. I've even seen some folks where they say, well, this department creates purchase orders in our accounting system because that's how we have to do it. And so do our other departments. But now that they've started utilizing FileBound, they found out it was less clicks and much easier to manually geocode the invoice in FileBound and approve it versus creating the purchase order. So again, it's all based on business rules and what logic your organization needs to operate with, which is totally fine. But I mentioned that just to let you know a lot of flexibility within the accounting system in that regard. So as I kind of move across the different forms here, capital acquisition forms, that's been a popular one as well. Hey, I want to buy a car for location A, but I need to get the right approvals. I need to get the right quotes. I need to get the right, et cetera, all organized. And sometimes maybe that's an email packet or a folder packet that's bounced around. We can turn that into a form and make it a lot easier to track and all that. One of the ones I skipped over on accident here was special allowances. So that one's become a little bit more popular where you're in a situation where you sell something to a customer and then, by no fault of you or no fault of theirs, within a week, they take it back home and it breaks, and it's something that they bought used. It's not really under warranty, but at the same time, whatever broke probably should never have broken or should have been caught, prior to selling it. So the customer comes back and says, hey, I got to spend $1,000. I just bought this, but shouldn't have broken in the first place. And you might sit around and say, I don't disagree. I think you got a good point. You then can fill out this form that collects, again, all the information that's required, and then route it through the approval process in FileBound to see if you can get an allowance so that, your company can just fix that piece, that broke for them, that type of thing. So kind of a fun one to do. But again, all of these are just, if you will, imagined by our customers or things that they've needed over time. And we've kind of created that for them, and they become a little bit more popular as we go. Vendor onboarding is common. So, this would be just an example of a form. So we give the vendor a link to this form. They fill it out. They attach their files. They hit submit. It goes right to the accounting team so that they can onboard that new vendor. A simple example of a purchase order request where, again, we work with you to determine what fields you would want on the form, what fields would be required, and then that way that document is available. And again, as soon as you hit submit, this form and the data and anything that you attach enters FileBound, it gets saved, and then if necessary, gets routed down a workflow. Again, capital asset request, which one thing that we found fun over the years with this particular form is that every company is completely different in the information that they want required, if you will, when it comes to capital asset requests. So again, we'll work with you to determine those rules and make that design, et cetera. That really concludes everything that I wanted to show today. The main thing for me was really just kind of pointing out some different things like the lifecycle changes. Our goal is to work with your team or your accounting team to minimize the number of times that you touch each invoice. That's really the big goal of ours. And then if we can we automate it so you don't have to touch that invoice at all? And then really, using that search screen to track invoices. The accounting team really uses it heavily to find invoices that have not yet been approved, so you can kind of stay on top of those things as well. And just a couple questions in the chat here. So yeah, good question, Paula. So some of you, as far as when we're inside of the FileBound viewer, will have different buttons, and some people will have a button called wrong approver and simply just lets you route that invoice, to somebody else. I've seen other folks where they'll ask to say, hey, we'd like to have a button to say, send a regional manager, for example, right? So that way, instead of approving it, you might look at it and say, yeah, this is pretty good, but I feel like it would be important for that invoice to go to the next level, regardless of the dollar amount. So we could add a button in there to maybe send that off to a regional manager or even just a store manager, that type of thing. So good question on the approval process. So most of our customers have the FileBound workflow license. I'm not too sure if we have anybody that doesn't. A lot of times, if you've purchased it just as FileBound as like a storage option, where we're just scanning, for lack of a better way of saying it, and adding documents for storage, a lot of times we will work with FileBound to get a deal on that to include the workflow if we can. But I can certainly work with you to see if we've got that module on your license as well. So great question. All right. Well, I think that kind of covers all the questions. And again, kind of a shorter meeting this time. We'll again reach out and let you know the additional meetings coming up here. And looks like our next one is really going to be for folks that are not using FileBound AP workflow. So if you've got anybody on your organization, they're welcome to join, but we'll probably focus that mostly on people that haven't seen workflow at all from an accounts payable standpoint. And then we're going to get into a little bit more specific meetings where it kind of covers the capture and OCR process, et cetera. So, well, appreciate everyone's time today, and appreciate your business always. And anything you need, please reach out, let us know. Again, from an email standpoint, our support team, fbsupport@vitalecm.com, or if it's something sales related, you'd like to reach out to Jim direct, you're more than welcome to do that. If you've got my contact information, you're more than welcome to reach out to me as well. So again, thanks to everyone on the call, and appreciate the time today.